Yo, what is up everyone? Back here with another video. Today we're going to be doing a video on the team that I used to win Victory Road. If you guys would like access to the full pace of this team, it is up on Patreon at the moment. I will be releasing this full pace at some point. The only reason why I'm not releasing it at this moment while writing the Steam report is just because I might be using something like it later, right? So for the moment, I'm not going to be, releasing the EVs that I use. That being said, I am going to go over the team, and then I'm going to go over the run as a whole, and I will be showing you guys the open sheet. So just to give a quick review, this team is very similar to the team I used to win the Zelda Challenge, which happened pretty much a week before this tournament. And the Zelda Challenge was a $50 entry fee tournament where pretty much, it's a pretty hefty entry fee, right? I ended up winning that tournament, right? So that was really good. I have a team report on that as well. And my run as a whole, it's definitely a lot less people that I played versus than in this tournament, right? But basically my thought process was just like, that team was pretty solid. I felt pretty good about it. And then I was kind of identifying where I felt like the weak spots were on the team. And I kind of realized that like Venusaur was pretty bad on the team because it just like required me to commit a max to it. And majority of the time, like I didn't get much rewards out of it because like it just wasn't so great, like, into stuff like Zacian. You didn't really have Sun to compensate for it. I found that I was relying a lot heavier on Zapdos, so I wanted to lean into something that would still give me that grass coverage option without necessarily needing to require a max, right? So I ended up settling on Rillaboom. I wanted Rillaboom because Rillaboom was able to pressure Gastrodons. I was able to just bring it into matchups where, like, I was just able to, like, pressure the opponent with it. I didn't have to necessarily commit a max to it. And it had fake out utility as well, which kind of gave me double fake out on team, give this team a bit more of a defensive backbone as well, give me a bit better pivots. So it was just overall really good addition to the team. I'm really happy with the choice at it. I thought that was probably like the best change going into this tournament. And a key thing too about like this team as well is like I noticed that for the most part, like the Kyogre slot and the Venusaur slot were like sometimes brought but not always brought. And like the main core that I was leaning into was like Zacian, Zapdos, Incin, Grimmsnarl. So like going into this tournament, I wanted to have like another option that would be a little bit more usable in a lot more matchups. So like Rillaboom was that, right? It ended up working really well. So that's pretty much it as a whole. It also allowed me to bring Kyogre a little bit more because I was kind of loosened up if like I played versus a Gastrodon. So it gave me a bit more options there. But anyways, so talking about the team as a whole, Zacian was just kind of your standard, set. You run Play Rough, Sacred Sword, Behemoth Blade. You have the option of a fast attacker, which can do a bunch of damage. Kyogre, I changed to Mystic Water from Assault Vest. The reason why I changed it to Mystic Water is I wanted to be able to deal more damage with it. I wanted to be able to really pressure the opponent. Some notable things about it, right, is like I wanted to give it enough bulk to take 2 Behemoth Blades. I can't give you guys the exact TVs, but I can tell you kind of what the idea of the team was, right? So it was a bulkier Mystic Water Kyogre. Then Grimmsnarl, pretty similar to the other team. Then Zapdos, which was pretty much just a max Zapdos, pretty straight offensive. Rillaboom was utilizing Grassy Glide High Horsepower, which ended up being huge. Running High Horsepower versus not running it made like all the difference because High Horsepower let me pin Zacians way harder. And then having U-Turn as the last move was really helpful as well because it allowed me to pivot a little bit. Then Incineroar, same set, Flare Blitz, Parting Shot, Throat Chop, Fake Out, right? So pretty straight there. I wanted to quickly go over the common pairs as well with the team. I found myself not using the Zacian Incin lead as much, but when it was good, it was really good, right? Majority of the time, though, I did find myself leading, some other combinations, right? Grimmsnarl Zapdos was a huge one. Really useful into certain Kyogre matchups and just, like, other matchups where, like, maybe I could beta Behemoth Blade into Zapdos and I would click Reflect, swap into Incineroar, right? And I'd just be able to take the Behemoth Blade or, like, some other kind of hit. It just kind of gave me a lot of flexibility. And, like, the ability to screens plus, like, swap and Intimidate was really nice. Then, finally, Zacian Grimmsnarl. I found myself using this lead quite a bit, too. Basically, just gave me flexibility to, like, Thunder Wave things and Behemoth them fast, or just going for screens really quickly and just going for Behemoth Blades, right? So, it's just a really nice lead option. It was able to put on a substantial amount of pressure. So, I really liked, like, all the different options. I mean, realistically, you could lead almost anything together on this team. It's just about knowing when and where you need to do so. So, that's pretty much it for the actual, going over, like, quick summary of it. I'll have the paste up here quickly. We'll transition over. Here you go. You guys can see the quick open sheet of the paste. Pretty much what I said. Feel free to, use the open sheets, add your own EVs, whatever. There's no point hiding it, right? It's up on Victory Road anyway, so it's all good there. And then we go back, right? So now we're going to start all the way from the bottom. And I'm going to tell you guys a story, okay? So you would think, right, that being a big tournament that I really wanted to win, that the #1 priority would be to wake up for this tournament. However, you would be wrong. My strategy, apparently, was oversleeping round 1. Technically oversleeping round 2, waking up, and my opponent wasn't there. So round 1, I wasn't there. My opponent took the activity win over me. Obviously, 1-0-1. I am blissfully asleep. I do not know that this is the case, right? So it's whatever. Round 2, I wake up after activity timer is passed, but I realize my opponent never messaged me. So I'm like, "Are you here?" And I type it. And I'm like waiting. I'm like, okay. They haven't said anything. I'm like, all right. So I take the win, right? And then I sleep a little bit longer. Then finally round 3, it's time for me to play the game, right? So I end up doing really well. I 2-0 my next opponent, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. Like 3-1, like this is pretty good, you know? Then I play, you know, round 5, and then, you know, kind of goes on from there. But I'll start from round 3. So from round 3, pretty much, I just played versus a standard Yveltal Zacian team. I pretty much just used, like, Zacian and Zapdos to kind of power through this team. All of the Yveltal Zacian matchups, I pretty much just leveraged Zapdos and Zacian versus them. It was just really good into them. Into round 4, I actually went with something that I don't usually do, which is I didn't bring Zapdos and I didn't bring Grimmsnarl, right? I went with, I think it was Zacian, Incineroar, Kyogre, and Rillaboom, I'm pretty sure. And the reason why I took those was because it gave me the most amount of flexibility into the opponent's team, and Rillaboom was, like, really solid. I used Rillaboom as the max option for this matchup, just because they didn't have much to remove max Rillaboom on this team, and I was able to mess with the Coco's terrain, and it also, like, destroyed Gastrodon. Then, round 5 comes, I play versus Phil, otherwise known as Registeel Sucks. I do really well game 1, right? Like, I just win game 1, pretty straightforward, just really good position for me. Game 2, I lead properly, pretty much just like a lead that will absolutely like destroy the matchup, and I just get crit on Zapdos by Behemoth Blade. I just lose it turn 1. So I just insta forfeit turn 2. And obviously going into game 3, I'm like, oh, you know, that's fine, I'll just win. And I end up losing, and I will say at that point, I was pretty salty. I think I even was like in one of my group chats, I was like, dude, I was like, imagine losing, like getting crit by Behemoth Blade turn 1. But anyways, I kind of just like got over it. I was like, whatever, man, I'll just win the next few out. So extra context as well for this, right? So I had this Sweet 16 I needed to go to as well for a family member. And at this point, I was kind of hoping that I would go like X and 1, right? And then I wouldn't have to play out round 9. I'd just take the loss. However, that's not how it went, right? Now I basically need to win every single round. So I need to stay a little bit extra. So I'm kind of like, oh, I hope these rounds go by a bit faster, right? So it was also like that extra like time restraint on there. And what's it called? I get to, round 6, and I'm kind of like, okay, you know, I'm 3-2, but like, I mean, it's Zygarde, Solgaleo, you know, and like, I get pretty lucky versus my opponent round, like, game 1. I actually end up beating them because I think I get like a Thunder Wave paralysis or something. I'm like, you know what? This is okay. Then game 2, I just beat them. They just lost, right? And then, so I'm starting to feel a bit better about it, right? Like, because into Zygarde, realistically, you just max your Kyogre, or you max your Zapdos, and just, like, spam water moves, and they can't really do too much, right? So it was a pretty easy matchup as a whole, I felt like, for the most part. Like, I definitely got a bit lucky game 1, but, like, yeah. Then I play versus Dylan, which is just a win-win. Again, like, I just leveraged, like, Zapdos and Zacian into this, right? It was pretty straightforward. I was able to put on a bunch of pressure in that regard, and, you know, just kind of pressure it. Then I play versus Ian. This matchup could have been difficult, but I basically just read Ian, like, every single turn. Game 1, I, like, really styled. And, like, I think just, like, really was, like, heavy on predictions, like, knew what I was doing. Felt pretty comfortable. Game 2 was a little bit closer. It actually came down really close because Araquanid ended up critting something. I forgot what exactly it was, but ended up critting, I think it was my Zacian. And because it got crit, it put me into a really dire endgame with Rillaboom. So it ended up being a little bit closer than I think it had to be, but I ended up winning that game too as well, so I felt pretty good about that. Then finally, this was easily the hardest set, I think, in Swiss for me. Which I guess is fitting since it was the last match and I was kind of late to the party, right? And it was versus Alpalco. Now, for the most part, right, like, you would look at the team and be like, okay, well, he's literally just your team, you know, he has Seismitoad over Incin. But the problem with the Seismitoad is it forces me into a certain lead. So I have to basically lead Rillaboom and Zapdos, right? Now the problem is that I could not lead that, right? But then if Kyogre and Seismitoad gets led and I don't lead Rillaboom, I just lose, right? Like, I'll just lose the game outright. So it forced me in a position where I basically had to do that. And, like, it ended up being game 1. I ended up winning. The problem with their Zapdos too is it was Eerie Impulse, right? Which was huge. That was actually really big for the matchup. Or no, they weren't Eerie Impulse, but they were Bulky Roost. So basically, like, what I kept doing in the games was prioritizing the Zapdos immediately. Game 1, I just lightninged it twice and got it off the field as quickly as I could. Because I just knew that having the opposing Zapdos around would be bad. Game 2, they just leveraged their Zapdos a little bit better and got into a better endgame versus me. And then game 3 was really, really close. Their Zapdos ended up living through multiple turns and making it to the point where it could roost. But I managed to chip it down just enough where I was able to beat it. And that was like kind of the deciding factor. But it was super close. I remember like my nerves were super high. I was like really trying to beat this person and they played super well. So I'm not personally familiar with my opponent, but they played like phenomenally, right? They played super well. Then, it's party time. I go to the party, I get a little drunk off of champagne. I had a good time, right? Come back, have like late night McDonald's, I didn't practice at all. I didn't look at any of my matchups, didn't worry about any of that. Then I wake up in the morning, I make sure to wake up on time. The Pokemon Direct was on the same day as well, so I tuned into that. And then, it was time for top 32, so we got right into it. Now, this matchup, I played versus a really good Japanese player, Snow, for another league I'm in, NPA. And he used this team, and he absolutely demolished me, right? And, like, from playing him, I asked him for a rematch, actually, right after our set. And he played me again. And from our match, I kind of learned, like, what to do and what not to do and kind of how to approach the matchup a bit more, along with practice with, like, some of my teammates. So I had a really good idea of how I wanted to approach into, like, this version of the Sun team, right? So it kind of gave me a better idea of, like, how I wanted to deal with that, right? So I ended up playing versus Chris. I ended up losing game 1, I think, because I missed or something. Or, like, I got unlucky in some regard. I forgot exactly what it was. It doesn't really matter, right? And then game 2 and game 3, I just completely outplayed, right? Like, I just put myself in a better position, won the game, that was it. I felt pretty good about it. I also think, too, my opponent, obviously there's a huge difference, right, between, like, super good Japanese top 4, like, worlds player, and then, like, top cut of, like, Victor Rotorn. That, by the way, that's no flack to my opponent. It's just, like, like, you see, like, how good like a really top like Japanese player can be, and like that really sets the bar high for like your play. So like you definitely improve your play, and like the way you look at the matchup has changed after you play versus someone like that, right? I have a lot of respect for Snow. And that's one thing I'm very glad I got to face him, because it really helped me in my run here. And it's good to lose, it humbles you and it teaches you kind of like how you want to approach stuff. So it was definitely super helpful in this top 32 match. Then we get top 16 versus Seba. Now I'm gonna say I, by all intents and purposes, probably should have lost this matchup. It was actually kind of hard for me. I didn't actually think it was gonna be that hard at first, but then the more I played it, the more I realized Blastoise is really annoying to remove. It was Wakanberry Blastoise, right? So it was like super difficult to break. But I ended up having enough tools. I got through it, in game 2, game 1, I just got rolled by it. Like, I absolutely just got demolished by the Blastoise. Then game 2, I was smarter, positioned myself better, but also 2, the lead that was brought out by Seba wasn't the same, if I remember correctly. And then 3, there was a completely different adjustment that just ended up losing them the game, like, really quickly. So I feel like had my opponent played the way they played game 1, they probably would have been in a much better position, right? I was also doing a little bit better about, like, resource management and not, like, losing stuff really early. But, yeah. Then top 8. So I've, obviously I know the creator of this team, NJ. He's very, very good with this team, and I've had a lot of experience playing versus this before, so I was pretty comfortable going into this. And, no one plays the team better than the creator of the team, right? So, like, that's a lot of good experience and matchup, like, knowledge to have. And also, too, my opponent didn't bring Thundurus, which made my life a lot easier. I think had my opponent brought Eerie Impulse Thundurus, it would have been a little bit more annoying for me to deal with. But they didn't. They focused on the Charizard mode, which, like, you could argue probably wasn't the best play, but also, too, like, I kind of understand it, right? Because you're kind of worried with, like, the Thundurus, you're going to have something that's too passive. But I think into my team, it was the correct bring. So, like, them not bringing it made my life a little bit easier. And then, yeah. And then I play versus Adi. This set's actually... obviously, you can watch all these sets, technically, on my channel. But, if you want to watch it on Victory Road's official channel, they also have it up there, right? So, played for top 4 versus Adi. This was I felt really good about my play at this point, right? Like I was really confident. Even though the Eerie Impulse Thundurus was really annoying for me, I felt pretty like good about like how I was playing. Game 1, I played super well. Like I definitely outplayed Adi in game 1. Then game 2 was kind of like tit for tat. He just outplayed me, right? He played a lot better than me. He leveraged the Thundurus a lot better. And then game 3 was a little bit closer, right? I think in game 1 too, to put it in context, like I made some good plays. Like I felt pretty good about myself. Like I called like multiple protects in a row. I grassy glided into Amoonguss, which won me the game because then Palkia came in, took a bunch of chip. Then Thunderbolt plus grassy glide picked it up, right? So I felt pretty good overall about like how I was playing, right? And then you know, game 2 comes, I lose, and then game 3. I end up playing, he has like Ditto in the back, so pretty much the nice thing is because I forced his Ditto to copy my Incineroar, he could only lock in the Fake Out or Fire move, and I just kind of called him out on which one he clicked, right? Because if you click Fake Out, it's useless after that, right? So I respected the instant, got rid of it, and then I was able to win the game from there, right? So that was good. And then I was in finals, right? So at this point, like, I'm pretty confident in my play. I'm a very, like, I definitely respect my opponents, but, like, also, too, like, when I have, like, those days where, like, I know I'm playing well, like, I feel really good about, like, my runs, you know? So at this point, I was, like, sure I could win the whole thing, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't really doubtful. And when I saw the matchup, I actually felt better than I would have had it been, like, Prankster Thundurus, right? So this was Defiant Thunder, so it made my life, like, way easier. And game 1, I just ended up winning. Like, I just outplayed my opponent, played better. Changfu also played well. I think game 1 was definitely the most, like, difference in terms of like how the game was played. Like I definitely played a lot better in game 1. Game 2, I actually was about to win the second game, but then I got kind of unlucky. I think I got crit or like I missed something. I forgot exactly what the scenario was. And then game 3, I did to be honest get a little bit lucky as well. I definitely outplayed the first 2 turns, but then I crit the Zacian with Origin Pulse, which like I think I still won, but it definitely like accelerated the win process. By the way, guys, I'm doing obviously a TLDR. Like you guys should definitely watch these sets, right? Like they're definitely good sets, and they kind of show you how I like played the team. But yeah, overall, like, and my opponent was good. You know, my opponent like played well. They were very like solid. You know, it was just like I felt like I had a really good read on the matchup, especially like these Gastro Groudon teams, just because I had played versus them so much. When you're able to leverage Rillaboom and like know when to position your like Zapdos and your Kyogre, it makes these like teams a lot easier. So yeah, it was just a good call for a tournament. I felt pretty good, and like considering we started like literally 2 rounds, like obviously I won the second one because of activity, right? But like considering like I started like 1-1 and like I was sleeping the first 2 rounds, like this is a really like crazy run, you know. I definitely think too, like I will say, right, like if I had won early, I would have played versus probably like players who were in cut a little bit more, but also too, like I just literally think like I would have been confident in beating them regardless. You know what I mean? I don't think it would have changed my run whatsoever. So and like cut kind of showed that, right? Like I was confident and like I was pretty competent into like any of the meta teams that I was playing versus anyways. But yeah, I mean there were definitely some I think actually Phil had cut as well. So Phil had cut, and then that was pretty much it, right? So overall, like pretty solid run, I feel like. I feel like I played pretty well. I was really happy about top cut bracket and like how I played right there. So make sure to check that run either on my Twitch or on Victory Road's channel. But once again, guys, thank you for all the support on the videos. Make sure to check out Patreon if you guys would like access to this team along with other teams. Make sure to check out coaching if you guys would like to improve your skills. I've been working with a ton of people. We have Salt Lake Regionals coming up, European Regionals coming up, and Australian Regionals coming up. If you guys would like to practice for any of those, you know where to go. Link down below, x9academy.com. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for all the support. Incredibly appreciate it. And I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.